Well, good morning and welcome to Bridge Christian Church. We are so thankful that you are here with us. I'm Allie Robertson. I am one piece of the worship team here at Bridge. We have many people that we worship with. And so we're thankful that you've chosen this morning to worship, even though it's a little different than our normal Sunday gathering. So as we go on this different journey together, we do want you to do something fun. So if you would, take a minute to snap a photo of whoever you're with right now. We're going to begin with worship in just a few minutes, but we'd love to see those people that you're worshiping around, whether that's your cat, your dog, your grandparents, whoever that might be. Take a quick pic and pause the video. So you can actually send those well, I guess you could send a video, but you could send those pictures to Rick. His email's at the bottom of the screen. And so what's great about this is that when we're finally able to get back together, we're going to have this incredible collage of all these beautiful photos of us worshiping our King together in the great glory that we will do this morning. So take a minute, pause, take your photo, and send it to Pastor Rick. The other thing is, as we kind of look at worship and beginning worship this morning, a lot of the songs are around the water that Jesus provides for us, that life-giving space that He really comes to us in times of crisis, and He is the source and the rock for our kind of ability to get through hard times. So when you click on those YouTube links and you listen to this worship set this morning, be thinking about those things and the healing that God is going to bring to us. We are a hope-filled people. We are faith-filled, and we know that God is going to do wondrous works even in the midst of crisis. And that's the true message of worship, and that's why we can celebrate Him and we can love Him with all of our hearts, no matter what's going on around us. So if you would, just take a second to pause the video. You're welcome to listen just with eyes closed. You're welcome to raise your hands in the air. You're welcome to dance. Whatever it is that expresses your love for our King is what God requires of you right now. So in just a moment, press pause, listen to those worship songs, and we'll get started with worship. Let me lead us in prayer. God, thank you so much for our time today, for the ability to connect with one another, even though we're not face to face. Thank you, God, for just the breath that we have to sing, for the time that you've given us to be with our families this morning, and just kind of in our own homes and worship you that way. We know that you are here, and we want to call on your name, and we believe that great things are coming if we are faithful and we stay true to your word and to your love. Thank you again for your Son, and thank you for all the sacrifice that He gave for us. We pray all these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Hey Bridge, you've already probably heard that we're not going to be able to meet collectively as a church over the next 2 Sundays at Westview, but we've got some creative alternatives for you that I'm going to tell you about in a second. I also want you to know that even though we're not meeting at Westview, the church office is still open. We're going to be spending time just really getting the word out. One of the things we want to really do through this whole situation is a theme that we're calling Spread Love, not Corona. So if you do come by here for prayer, and we want to encourage you, and we want you to know that it's a clean place. So if you come by here, just know we've cleaned the coffee, although the aftertaste might not be great after that. Just know that if you use the copier, that's good to go. If you use the restroom, that's good to go. You know, sit on these seats. You know, this is a clean place. But even more important, we want to encourage you from the inside out to use this time to get closer to God and to each other, especially your families. You're going to be home together probably a little bit more because of the schools and that whole situation. So we want you to use that time, if you can, wisely. So first of all, just know that we've created some really cool interactive video lessons. So even though we're not going to be together Sunday, make sure you look those up on our website and on Facebook. There's messages, there's music and worship time, there's some interactive things to do with your kids. And when you do that, take some pictures of that and then send them to me at rick@bridgechristian.org, rick@bridgechristian.org, and we'll put together a collage of our church kind of at work, even in their homes, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, if you want to meet during those times. That would just really be kind of a fun thing. And then our midweek groups, our youth groups, our community groups that meet at Westview won't be meeting there either because the school will be closed. Individual groups can kind of choose if they're going to meet in homes and that kind of thing. The other thing I wanted to really share with you is, as you take this time, hopefully that you'll have with your kids a little bit more, we're going to share a link where you can do some random acts of kindness. There's a whole website on that. This is 100 different ideas that you can do as a family in your neighborhood, for the community, and get your kids in on this. Plan just a couple of fun, creative things together. Your kids, I can almost guarantee you, will be excited about this once they do it and see the results, and it might even become a part of your regular DNA. We've been talking about slowing down and spending more time as a family. This is your chance. Some of you might not know it also that we have already sent 5 pack-and-plays to Cookeville, Tennessee, where a lot of the tornado damage happened. Those were requested by DCS, Department of Child Services, there for parents who need something for their kids when they've been displaced out of their homes. Our church sent them 5 of those. You can sponsor any one of those 5 if you'd like to. Just get a hold of me and I'll give you more information, or email me at that same rick@bridgechristian.org and I'll tell you more about that. But just know that your faithfulness, your generosity helps us keep going during times like this, because our ministry is going to keep going. It's not going to stop, even though we're not meeting collectively. So we want you to know we're praying for you. We're here to support and encourage you. God bless you through this time, and just don't be shy about getting in touch.
Hey, good morning, Bridge Christian Church. Dr. Ty Young here. David asked me to give a medical update, so I'm going to attempt to do that super quick. COVID-19 and the coronavirus becoming more of a concern for us, certainly nationally, but also regionally. 9 cases in Tennessee, none in Hamilton County as of Friday, March 13th. That's today. But we really want to do our part to partner with our public health officials to minimize spread to those who would be most affected, and that's the elderly and those with chronic illnesses. Children and young adults are doing very well with this in general. It's very much a flu-like illness, and yes, they can be sick, like the flu, but most of those people are not getting into significant trouble with their health. But there will be outliers, and none of us want to be touched by that. So we want to do our part, and so we're partnering with local health officials to just really minimize that kind of social stuff that puts us more at risk for spreading infection. So that's called social distancing. So the school closings, the church not being able to meet, kind of avoiding big events like concerts and weddings and this type of thing is all the idea of minimizing spread. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, don't go to those big gatherings. That's really kind of what you can do. If you have symptoms, and that is fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, those are concerning. You need to contact your doctor for further instructions. We have a specific protocol here within the Erlanger Health System. We have one location where we're sending people who are concerned that they could have contact with someone or have come from one of those high endemic areas in the United States. We have one place we're sending those people for evaluation, so that it's just at one office, not every office. So your doctor's office will help steer you from there. Thank you, and just remain prayerful, and let's do our part.
Hey, this is Riley. Thanks for joining me online. I'm going to be reading from Exodus 17, verses 1 through 7. All the congregation of the people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of sin by stages, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt, to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried to the Lord, What shall I do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me. And the Lord said to Moses, Pass on before the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock of Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people will drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the quarreling of the people of Israel, and because they tested the Lord by saying, Is the Lord among us or not?
Hey, good morning, Bridge. How's it going? Look, a little elbow bump right there. Hey, we're so glad that you guys have joined us. You're there, and I'm here because of this national crisis that we are in. And as Dr. Ty just said right there, it is a serious event. But can we just take a moment? Because I've got to tell you, I'm pretty amazed at what people will do to stop the spread. So let's give it up for a couple of these people right here. Man, I know. We were talking in the office the other day, and Rick was saying that Sharon was at Aldi, and there was a guy who was trying to buy too much toilet paper, and so they told him to put it back. So I don't know if that's some of you out there. If it is, let me just assure you, Bridge has got you covered. All right. The Mosley family, they told me that they have more than enough. And so just give us a call here at the church office. We'll put you in contact with them. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but we're thankful for their help. I'm sure they'll help. So, but you all, it's times like this in national crisis where people go to great lengths to ensure their security. And it got me thinking, like, what if we did the same thing with our spiritual crises? I wish there was an alarm that would go off, like there would be a news channel just for spiritual crisis, like real spiritual crisis. Something like, many of you remember when we were young, we'd be watching our TV program and it would be interrupted by this test of the emergency broadcast system, that blue screen with the yellow type, and then it would be followed by this piercing sound. I still can't stand that noise. I was reading, in fact, that they used that test, the emergency broadcast system, some 20,000 times, but never for a real national crisis. But you all, maybe our reading today is the alarm. Maybe our reading and story today is like a test of the emergency broadcast system, where we need to listen to this voice, and maybe we need to hear the piercing sounds of this text that call out to us and say, pay attention. Here's something to think about. In the Bible, this great story of our faith, God so often uses the national crisis to expose the spiritual crisis. He uses national crises to awaken our spiritual senses. And he's done it all throughout time. So regardless of the national stuff going on, we would do well to use this opportunity as an opportunity for our spiritual senses to be awakened, not just our physical senses. This text that Riley read a moment ago from Exodus chapter 17, 1 through 7, it is a perfect example. If you've been tracking with us, we're in the season of Lent. Lent just means spring. It's these 40 days, not including the Sundays, leading up to the resurrection event, Easter Sunday. And these 40 days, 40 in the Bible is often just associated with the period of the wilderness. We see this in the wilderness wandering that we're looking at now. We see this in the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness. We see it, this number 40, it's often the time where people are being tested. They're going through the struggle. They're going through a wrestling. But the wilderness and those 40 days are also the womb for new life. That's a season that we're in. We're in a season where we're preparing for new life because Jesus' resurrection power is still available to you and to me. And so last week, we're just tracing the story leading up to Easter. We're looking at these little moments throughout salvation history. Last week, we looked at Abram, when God came to him and made him a promise, and he said, I'm going to make your name great. I'm going to make you into a great nation with a territory all your own. He said, I'm going to bless you, and you're going to be a blessing to all nations. And you all, that blessing was essentially to restore the blessing that had been lost at the fall. Or the Bible actually didn't call it the fall. The Bible calls it the curse. The curse happened. They were cursed, and the land was cursed, and the people have been thrown off ever since. And God is going to use Abram and his family to then bless all nations. And this is the good news that is for you and for me. And so for Abram, it took a lot longer than he would have ever imagined. But eventually that family, they grew into a nation. But they grew into a nation under a period of great struggle when they were in slavery in Egypt. But God used a deliverer named Moses to rescue them out of that bondage, out of that oppression, through the 10 plagues and them passing through the Red Sea and washing away the enemies chasing after them. God's power was evident. And there they stood on the seashore of the Red Sea, and they sang a victorious song. And more than anything, they trusted in the Lord there. They believed in him, and they believed that God was using Moses to lead them. But you all, that victory and dance and song, it was short-lived. The very next thing we read is that they entered the wilderness, and essentially the wilderness is the place of that chaos, of disorder, the place where God is reorienting people. And so he brings them into a national crisis. They could find no water. And when they did find water, the water was bitter. So they grumbled to Moses, and Moses interceded for them. And the Lord made the water sweet to drink. Then he led them to a place called Elim. And there at Elim, there were 12 springs and 70 palms. And there they rested. There they were sustained because of the Lord. But the next event is yet another national crisis. As they journey on, they grumble because there's a lack of food. In fact, they begin to remember the old days back in bondage and slavery, and they thought it would be better to even go backward. Because at least there they had, the bread and the pots of meat. And so they were grumbling yet again. And Moses interceded, and the Lord, in his graciousness, provided enough bread for every morning and enough meat for every evening. He gave them their daily sustenance. From there, they travel on to a place called Rephidim, and that's where our reading lands today. And as you can probably guess already from what's happened and what I've been sharing, they enter into another national crisis because they had no water yet again. And so they test and they quarrel with the Lord. And Moses, prays to the Lord yet again. And this time, the Lord says to Moses, he says, I will stand before you there on the rock. And he told him to take that staff. The staff was the sign of God's power. He says, you strike the rock and water will come out and the people will drink. Now, this is interesting in our reading because we're not exactly sure why the Lord's standing on the rock. It could just be a simple indication that his presence is there. It certainly means that, but I think it also means it kind of ties the Lord to the rock, that he is the rock for these people. He is the one that they are to build their life upon. He's the reliable one. He's the strong one. He's the gracious one. He's the one giving them their sustenance from the water. They are drinking from him. Sadly, the event in our reading today, if you look back at verse 7, these events are remembered more for the testing and quarreling with the Lord rather than the Lord's gracious sustenance. In fact, that's why they named the place Massa and Meribah, testing and quarreling. That's what that means. In fact, what's interesting is throughout the history of the Hebrew people, we read what they thought about this event in the Psalms. In fact, Psalm 95 is really the interpretation of that event. It calls to mind what happened there. It's a song of praise, but it's also got this strong warning towards the end. Listen to this. It says, "Oh, come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation." See there? The Lord is the rock. He's the one. "Let us come into his presence with thanksgiving. Let us make a joyful noise to him with songs of praise. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hand are the depths of the earth. The heights of the mountains are also his. The sea is also his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand." And then here's the warning. "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as at Meribah, as on the day at Massa in the wilderness, when your fathers put me to the test and put me to the proof, though they had seen my work. For 40 years I loathed that generation and said, they are a people who go astray in their heart, and they have not known my ways. Therefore I swore in my wrath, they shall never enter my rest." Wow. How sad is it that this great event is remembered in that way? But you all, we would do well to take the warning. In fact, as we look back at the story in hindsight, it's easy enough to see what the Lord was doing. It's this thing that we've been talking about. Addition by subtraction. The Lord was taking them along these little staging areas in the wilderness, not to take away life, but to add to their life. But in order to add to their life, he removed those comforts so they could learn to trust in him, to show them that he was the rock, that he was the strong one they could build their life on, that he was the reliable, gracious one, sustaining one. Maybe as you've been sitting there today, listening and watching, that you've been wondering what this stack of journals is all about. Well, this is like the record, or at least part of the record, that I've had with the Lord. For some reason, in 1996, this journal was kind of the start of it. My first entry was in July 1996, and it has some notes in there. And I began to take prayer requests, write prayers, take notes during sermons. I'm not exactly sure why I started doing this. I know my relationship with the Lord was growing as a teenager, and I know looking back that it helped me pay attention in the moment. Writing helped me. And so here's 23 years of the track record of the Lord, and some of the things written in here, quite honestly, are really tough times. Some of them, I know this one down here, that one's got some big things that the Lord did in my life. But this is his track record. He's proven himself time and time again, just as he did with the Hebrew people. But you all, could I just, in case that sounds like really spiritual or something, let me just confess to you. When I enter into a crisis, even today, the last thing I do is run here. The last thing I do is I start rummaging through 23 years of the Lord's track record in my life and go, oh, well, here's what he did then, and here's what he did there, and, everything's, he's going to bring me through. No, I don't do that. And sadly, it's almost as if today's crisis, I completely forget the Lord's track record. It's as if I just erase all of this. It's the same thing the people did in the wilderness, when the Lord started subtracting, when they entered into the chaos, they forgot what he did yesterday. And it was their undoing. I wonder if I'm not alone, even though I'm alone here, I wonder if I'm not alone in this. I wonder, do you have a track record with the Lord? Has he proven himself time and time again? And yet maybe you find yourself today in a crisis, not just the national crisis, but maybe your own spiritual crisis. There's an alarm sounding off right now. Your senses are heightened. And you say, you know what? I have forgotten him. I have moved further from him. Y'all, if that's the case, let me just remind you that God often uses like national crises like this to awaken our spiritual senses, to awaken us to the spiritual crisis. And that spiritual crisis, it's the inability to trust the Lord and to enter into his rest. You know, that phrase, rest in peace, that's not something that's just supposed to be said at our graveside. That is supposed to be the mark of our life in him. It's what he's doing. It's what he was doing with the Hebrew people. It's what he wants to do with you and I, that he is the sustaining rock. We draw our life from him. And you all, the good news is that rock that was there in that wilderness for the Hebrew people, when they were coming out of everything they were coming out of in bondage and slavery, that same rock is still available. And that rock is Jesus Christ. In fact, listen to what the Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 4. For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. You all, Jesus Christ is our rock. The New Testament also says that he's the stone the builders rejected, and he's become the capstone. That means he's the one that we should build our life in, but so many people have rejected him, and yet through his death and through his resurrection, he has become the crowning achievement of all. He's the blessing that was promised to Abraham for all nations. And you all, his grace is still available. He is still the one who is reliable and powerful. He's the one that will sustain us through every crisis. He's the one that we draw our life from. I just encourage you today, if your life is drawing off of something else, if your life is drawing off of anything but the real spiritual food and drink from Jesus Christ, I want to encourage you to just make a turnabout. I want to encourage you to pay attention to these spiritual senses right now, to turn your life over to him, to surrender to him, to walk in his path, whether you have a lot, whether you have a little, whether things are uncertain or whether they're very secure for you right now. I want to invite you to do something we've been practicing as a church, where we just take a couple of minutes to be completely silent. We're going to time the video out right now for that time. Would you just take this moment to pray, to praise, but also to listen to that voice Amen. You all, we want to thank you again for joining us. I hate that we are unable to partake in communion together today, because communion really is our spiritual food and drink together. It's what we draw our life from, the grace, the death and victory of Jesus Christ. And we come back to that table, invited and included to that table, no matter what we've done, no matter what we're going through, no matter what's coming. This is where we draw our life. So I'd encourage you, maybe you've got some juice. If you happen to have juice, if you happen to have something other than grape juice, maybe just use that too. Do something today to remember this meal. Maybe you're going to go off to lunch today, and why don't you just take a couple extra minutes to just go around the table and to just remember his sacrifice and his victory, his resurrection power still available. We also want to encourage you all to keep giving in a time like this. We know a lot of people are in financial straits, or perhaps, and could be very soon. We want to continue to trust the Lord as a church as well. We've made giving very easy. You can go to bridgechristian.org/give, and you can follow along there. Click the Give Online button. And but also you can text give followed by the amount to our number that we send out prayer lists and notifications to you all. That number is 423-800-8287. And you can also use that number to submit your prayer requests today. We would love to receive what you're thinking about, what you're praying about, what we need to be praying about for you. Again, you can use 423-800-8287. If you use that for prayer requests, just type the keyword pray followed by your request. Thank you so much for being with us. We also have some children's materials. So as soon as I hang up here, Megan's going to come on and tell you how you can walk through a lesson today for your kids as well.
Hey Bridge Kids parents, our Bridge Kids team has put together a lesson for you to do with your kids. It could be a pretty cool gift to your child that you get to be their Bridge Kids teacher today. All you have to do is open the attached document. Within that document, there's one elementary age lesson and one pre-K lesson. Both these lessons go right along with what the kids have been learning all month. The elementary lesson does have a video that goes with it. Just click on the attached links. It'll take you right where you need to go. Have fun and let us know how it goes. We're excited to hear.